which consisted of Earth 1 and 2 as prime Earth, and the remaining, which later would be combined as Earth 0, which will become the new prime Earth, and Birth 51 extra universe multiverses. Now, I have to say, personally, multiversity is actually boring, but let's sort of go over the entire thing as quick as possible. We see Nick's U-turn from Earth Zero or Prime Earth as he gazes at the comics to read. The book's dialogue basically talks to him consciously and unconsciously in the sense that it is referring to the comic world but to him. Nick's U-turn is the last of the Monitor race, which he basically kills everyone off because they wasn't doing their jobs as they started having contradicting ideals. Nyx is the super judge in this comic, as they read the Ultraman comic, which in short, we get to see the introduction of what is called the Oblivion Machine. This gentry or the gentry, I'll call it gentry, or gentry, basically can use the reading of the comic to kill you as they basically control the narrative from a fictional standpoint, but this is done only through multiverse or F7. We see that the gentry want Nick's U-turn as long as he takes the place of the Thunder or any one of them. Nick's U-turn is the multiversal monitor and the strongest of his kind. He tells the Thunderer to go to the House of Heroes using the Ultima Thulum, which works based on vibrational string theory logic to move between multiverses. He tells him to go to the House of Heroes and gather more like a multiversal Justice League, which he will get to the House of Ideas soon. I say House of Ideas, House of Heroes. We see that he can touch the edges of time and space as well as the universe closing in on itself, and he could feel the gentry and other creatures like them, which are Dame Merciless, Hell Machine, Lord Broken, Demogoron, or Demogoron, and so on. This next panel, we see he drops the book in shock and fear. This is so because from Earth Prime, he was basically brought to the comic world with his mind, and it's like some virtual reality just without a glasses or console. Your consciousness mind or your conscious mind is the virtual reality of the glasses, and the book is the console. In this context, we get to Earth 23 where we have more of black heroes and the president named Calvin Ellis, and he is the Superman of that Earth. On this Earth, they was tracking this robot that crashed, and I want to point out more proof of each multiverse having infinite dimensions. As Wonder Woman says, he should check higher planes of endless worlds, which occurs only in the bleed. The outer planes have few rooms that are just beyond infinitely large, and they are archetypal and platonic. So yes, each universe is possibly its own high hyperversal construct. We see Lex creates this kind of machine to transverse parallel universes, which works, and also this Lex is a drug addict. Now, Superman lives via a comic warp to a place named the House of Heroes. Captain Carrot. I like Captain Carrot. Really cool concept in DC, to be honest. Captain Carrot. We see this conversation which occurs, and it turns out that possibly every Lex Luthor variant of the multiverse got a concept of this transmatter box for the same similar purpose, but Captain Carrot's variances got his from a comic book, which is amusing, to be honest. And we see a longtime friend called Harbinger, or some people pronounce it as Harbinger. I prefer Harbinger, who has been inbuilt to the House of Heroes or the Monitor satellite since the Crisis event at OA, which they're in OA right now, which watches after the 52 multiverses. And the Monitors used to use that to watch over the multiverses. Now, we see this comic concept where another multiverse is fiction in another, and heroes are fans of each other. And this is one of those Grant Morrison concepts to where anything is possible within the multiverse. as they use the ultimate Thule to play to transformational vibrational range frequencies. The journey between universes and all is basically fiction from there. And as they go as they go to save Nyx, we see Nyx looking extremely evil, mentally fucked up, and annoyed that he had gotten to a point of almost no return and had been there for years. We see this text that tells we the reader to put down the book that they're getting to us, which is referring to Nyx from Earth Zero. We see this scan that says as the narrative goes with or without you, and we see the gathering of other heroes as the House of Heroes was getting attacked. The small hero Wonder Woman and Cyborg almost got jumped as little Cyborg says, "He calls us home. Empty is my hand," and they fainted. We see Nyx with this transmatter cube trying to open a portal for the Gentry into the multiverse, and he was on a countdown to such events. One Gentry had already made its way to Earth 7, where all these shenanigans started. We see this monkey who has been helping a bit with with the explanation of Nyx's plan. He tells Captain Carrot that the story is in the comic, everything that will happen, and as the Red Racer runs trying to stop the events from taking place by using the keyword SOS, which is what carries people around universes in the bleed. He tries using it to stop the entry of the Gentry from that cube by altering its functions in time by knowing what will happen prior to this, which is weird as he should have read his loss. As they open the orrery, everything gets into shambles as the Gentry made their way through Earth 7. And as they defeat the first Gentry, we see some other creatures which I mentioned earlier. They see Empty Hand, who waits at the end of all things. This dude is so big that the Gentry look like bats compared to him. Now, time for the scaling. We know that even people like Nyx Utan could trade Darksei, which is his true form if you have been keeping up with DC. True from Darksei video along his avatars, or in other words, a Darksei video which goes over all his feats, I guess, will be coming soon. But Darksei's true form scales to peak out of Verso around the level of the Monitor. Nyx is father to the Gentry, and the Gentry are nothing to Empty Hand. They create the Oblivion Machine, which has been shown its uses, but some people still haven't comprehended it since. Basically, the Oblivion Machine is used to end the narrative in the sense that it is the concept of like an author finishing a run, as it says, they make the machine, the final chapter of your never-ending story. They are the concept of throughout, we see that they made Nyx start reading the comics because they start the narrative. The concept of the author starts in the comic, which brings interest to the reader, and they want the reader who is Nyx Utan to start reading. But the concept of the reader is the Empty Hand. The decision between a reader reading or stopping the comic is Empty Hand. And when they close the book, then the comic ends. Now, this is deeper than people think. We see that Empty Hand ended Multiverse 2. And we know that there can be possibly infinite DC multiverses within it. But and when I say within it, I'm talking about within DC. But there will be the light multiverses, which is where my theory for the dark multiverse being the opposite to the overvoid, which was shown to be on the map in a comic. I can't really remember, but here's the scan. We see that each universe is fiction to the other. This also occurs for Limbo to the Godsphere, but they are still on the same tier, just that Limbo is higher since the Godsphere doesn't also see it as such. The Overvoid witnessed creation by seeing the bleed first and created monitors to watch it. The light multiverse is definitely plenty, as this is also proven by Perpetua's kind to create a light multiverse on the Overvoid and not the dark multiverse, which is something I will address in my Perpetua versus Nyx video, because I have seen a lot of creation myths around Perpetua now just to wank her out of context, and people are just retarded. There could be many overvoids because the end cover of a comic book, the white page, is the overvoid. And yet these people hold comics of each other. Now that may not mean anything but just normal comic in their world, but still doesn't make sense since the events that was happening took place within the comics and they got inspiration from. And the gentry used those comics to reach out to them. Now the voids are still the same one big overvoid, because Earth 7 is just where Empty Hand came to, and the comics are representations of the Monitor Mind as well, but doesn't mean they are above it. The comic just shows the events they live in and can't control. The overvoid is still the overvoid, which Empty Hand scales above such because he ends the narrative, he ends the overvoid. The simple reason why these can't count as some transcendence feats is because it is fictional transcendence, which isn't an infinitesimal transcendence. It isn't something to bother about since it doesn't really change much. The dark multiverse definitely is the opposite of the overvoid, and that would be dived in more in my recent coming video or my final DC cosmology video. Empty Hand is inaccessible into high alto verso. And I hope you guys found this video informative. Please do to like, share, comment, subscribe, and see y'all next time. Peace.